Hi, I'm Simon Isaacs, and this is our Anything in Print podcast.
So a lot of what we focus on is that path and what it means. And I think one of the most valuable lessons that have come up as far as skill gathering is that a career ladder is not always a ladder straight up. Sometimes it's a lattice. Sometimes you can go up, then you got to go over to maybe a similar role in another company or another industry. That I have a friend who is was the former curator of the Nobel Prize Museum, and he did a data study on was there a formula to look at to see who had won the most prizes. And he actually found a very interesting pattern, which was that the most prizes were won by teams from diverse backgrounds. So a linguist and a mathematician who you would think have nothing to do with each other, and they don't. And that's the whole point, because the linguist sees the world in one way and the mathematician sees it in another. And it just takes a linguist to say, well, why are you doing it that way, not this way, for the mathematician to go, oh my God. And that's, how you win a prize.
Welcome to the 5th episode of Series 2 of our Anything in Print podcast. I'm Tanya Howe, one of the leaders at Ricoh Graphic Communications Group here in the UK. And today we welcome Deborah Corn, a globally known promoter of women leadership in the print industry, a mentor, a podcaster, and a big champion of print. Thank you for joining me, Deborah.
Thank you so much for having me.
I hope you all enjoy the discussion as we explore topics very close to my heart and celebrate International Women's Day at the same time. But why discuss it? The print industry started as a highly physical, dirty job, and simply put, men were generally perceived to be better suited for it. But times have changed. The presses now mostly use digital processes. The machinery does the heavy lifting. So why has the industry not moved much with it? You may argue that the industry is not as appealing to women as other sectors are, but we know diversity drives better business outcomes. So how do we change it and make it more appealing, exciting, and diverse? But before we dive deeper into these topics, let's start with you, Deborah. Your work, your network, and reasons why girlswhoprint.net exist.
Well, thank you so much for having me. I really think this is so important. And, what I do is I am the self-proclaimed intergalactic ambassador to the Printiverse at Print Media Center, and I provide printspiration and resources to print and marketing professionals around the world. And I do that through education, through online events, through speaking, through a lot of community initiatives. And one of the community initiatives that I champion is called Girls Who Print. Mostly it is about really coming together and being there for support through all stages of a woman's career in the industry, whether they're students thinking about entering the industry, which is important. They could be in graphic communications program, but it doesn't mean we're winning them over yet. And then from the moment they step into the industry throughout their career, Girls Who Print is really there to support people, to provide resources, to provide information, such as, how do I know if if it's time for me to change jobs? How do I, really fight for a raise? How do I know if I'm being paid fairly, and things of that nature? It is not by any means a space for women to bash men, and that never goes on there. We have, for as many women, we have 9,600 women in the group. And for as many women that are in that group, there are an exponential amount of gentlemen out there who support the initiative, who support the members of the organization. But there is a unique experience of being a woman in any male-dominated industry. And this is just really a space where we can come together and learn how to move forward by empowering ourselves. I always like to say that we're not trying to get a seat at the guys' table. We're making our own table so that we can become hiring managers. We can become C-suite people. We can become owners of companies. And that's really when things will start to change in the bigger picture.
And you made an interesting comment there, and I'm just going to pick up on that around the industry being very male dominant. Do you see how does that compare to other industries? How does our industry, the print industry, compare to other industries for women? And what challenges do you think that they have?
I honestly can't answer that because I'm not an analyst or anything like that. But I, even in the digital marketing side of things and the tech side of things, it is male dominated in a lot of ways. And I just really think that's because early on, science, math, engineering, things of that nature are bestowed upon boys and guys as they grow up, and more of the liberal arts are sort of directed at women. So I think that that's where it goes all the way back to there, to where it stems from. But now we are definitely seeing a rise, especially in America, at least. STEM, which was science, technology, engineering, and math, now has an A in it for arts. So graphic arts, computer arts, communications, all falls under that. So I'm hoping that it will open up that to more people. Although I can say that in visiting the graphic communications schools, there are it is predominantly women students, girls and women who are students there, but they don't make their way over. And I just think we have an image and branding problem. It's not really what we do, because what we do is pretty freaking cool.
It is really cool. So in terms of advice for women that you're meeting in your network, how do you help them advance their positions? And on the flip side, what advice do you give to print organizations to encourage more diversity in their workspaces?
This is, first of all, I'm not a trained psychologist. I'm not a human resource person. I'm just somebody who has experience living in the world, and that is all of the group members are like that. I think that there has been I have seen a noticeable shift in what the members of Girls Who Print are asking for. In the beginning, it was a lot of how do I navigate this? I'm a woman in a male-dominated industry. No one's taking me seriously, and there was a lot of that. And after a couple of years, I wanted to move past it. I wanted to position it more as that we're not trying to get a seat at the male table. We're going to create our own table. We're going to grow our own hiring managers. We're going to grow our own CEOs, as I mentioned. We're going to grow our own owners of companies, and we will make changes from within that way. But I have to say that since the pandemic, there are way more young women and I call it Girls Who Print, but obviously I'm referring to women in the industry. There are many more young women coming into the Girls Who Print organization. I think they're looking for something to hold on to and say, okay, there's these guys around me, and they seem to have their own thing going, and I don't know how to get into it. And also, whether it's age or because they are women, they are back to saying that they're not being heard, they're not being respected, and things like that. So I have to say that as any good leader of an organization, not only am I providing paths forward, but I have to listen to this. And so I think in some ways, and I think the pandemic did it, because more women were displaced from the workforce than men. And as they came back, more men were hired than women. So I think in a lot of the progress we made in those years prior to the pandemic was wiped away by the pandemic. And in a lot of ways, we've gone like 5 steps forward, 3 steps back. So I'm focusing again on how to navigate everything. As far as the print organizations, I had mentioned prior to recording this podcast that I have a friend who was the former curator of the Nobel Prize Museum, and he did a data study on was there a formula to look at to see who had won the most prizes? Was there a way to become repeatable? And he actually found a very interesting pattern, which was that the most prizes were won by teams from diverse backgrounds. So a linguist and a mathematician who you would think have nothing to do with each other, and they don't. And that's the whole point, because the linguist sees the world in one way and the mathematician sees it in another. And it just takes a linguist to say, well, why are you doing it that way, not this way, for the mathematician to go, oh my God. And that's, how you win a prize. So I would say that to the organizations out there, why is this important? Why is this something to look into? It's not just to check a box and say, look, I'm being diverse. It's to understand that we are part of the world, and we need especially in the communications world, we have to reflect the world around us. We have to understand all the different perspectives. We have to understand that print customers are a diverse group of people, and we need to have diverse thoughts, experiences, ideas in order to really move together productively.
You make some really interesting points there, and the first one is the regression of women through COVID. It's something we've seen in the UK as well, and I think that there's been several publications McKinsey have actually shared around the role of the caregiver, and that being predominantly a female traditional role, and therefore women have regressed naturally into a caregiver role for the families where they've needed to through COVID, and therefore gave up their jobs. And the struggle is now bringing them back into the workplace in more interesting and exciting roles in print, hopefully. I think the other thing.
Can I just say something? Can I just add something to that? I saw a pretty horrific study the other day about pay inequality, and women are actually penalized for being caregivers, especially if they are. This is a horrific term, so it's child rearing years. Companies will pay women in that demographic less money because they assume they're going to leave and have children and will be left behind. So when it comes to pay inequality and the pay gap, it's actually based on what you just said, which is really goes back to, well, not if you have a woman CEO, not if you have a woman, a woman who are, making the HR policies, then that should not be something that you're penalized for, but yet it is. Women, at least in America, are making 82 cents on the dollar. It had been 77 cents, but since the pandemic, it stopped squarely at 82 cents. And like I said, unless you're in those child rearing years, then it's actually lower than that.
I see. That's interesting. I don't have any data that I could share with you on the UK stance on that. But going back to your points around different perspectives, mirroring your customers is a really important thing. And I've been in situations where I've been a diverse panel, and I presented to a customer who was equally a diverse panel, and it was commented on because they hadn't seen that. And what it brought to them, and I asked them the question, why is that important to you? And it is because it brings a rounder discussion with different perspectives. You can empathise with the audience if your audience can mirror. So understanding a balance of a team and what that can bring is really important. And that's a wider discussion, that diverse perspectives from different backgrounds, ethnicities, gender is really important as part of a team. So depending on the size of the operation, some of our clients speak about digital transformation, some about diversification and growth, and some simply surviving. Could a more diverse workplace help them? And how do you think they could?
I think that, we touched upon the most important things, which is life experience. But if we want to go further than that, if you're around people that just agree with everything you say all the time, I'm sure it must feel really great. But more than likely, you're going to attract only the people that also feel that same way. Again, if it's working for you, it's working for you. But that cuts off everybody else who might say yes, but, or yes, and bring more robust views, commentary, more people. I mean, I have to say that, you know, there's a lot of just ticking boxes lately, and it's interesting because mostly I hear the gentlemen complaining about it. There's only a panel of women because they're trying to show that, you know, there's women, and there's only they're only looking for diversity in the print shop because they want to, you know, check off a box that there's diversity in the print shop. Well, if that's your motivation and that gets you to do something positive, okay, check off a box and say you did it. But I truly believe, and from everything I've heard, when people do embrace it and start realizing that this is a business decision, this is not about ticking off a box. This is about being part of the world that we are part of, by understanding that Gen Z is the most diverse generation ever in the history of the world, and to not be reflective on their positions, about how they feel about things in this, about giving back, about being fair, about being just, about making sure that everybody is protected and feels safe and comfortable is a big word. Yes, this is a big change forget the baby boomers. It is a very, I don't think they'll ever truly embrace it. I'm a Gen Xer. I do embrace it, but Gen Xers pretty much embrace everything except the work thing. Like, I only work till 6 and then I make my jam at night. Like, that's where the Gen Xers lose their minds, because we just work all the time. But it really is just about it's not about a digital transformation, it's about a social transformation as well. And I think that the printing industry is so steeped in traditions, because print is from the 1600s, but the traditions can still be there. By embracing more people, we can expand them and create new ones that will be very important for the future health of the industry.
And how could organisations look to implore some of those? What initiatives could be available and tools to help them become more diverse and benefit from the outcomes we're talking about around mirroring their customers, around driving more revenues through different perspectives and challenging traditional ideas? What could they be doing today to help their organisations diversify?
I think that it starts with authenticity and telling an authentic story about your company, your values, your goals, your mission, and yes, how you're giving back to the world. If Gen Z and the younger end of the millennials think any business is just greedy and in for it for themselves, they're going to make a different purchasing choice based upon who's giving money back to the pet shelter, who's giving money back to a disease or something like that. It doesn't have to be a hot topic political thing. There are many causes that we can champion if it's authentic. And I think that the more companies tell their authentic stories and what they stand for, they have a better chance of attracting people who want to be part of that and add to it and contribute to something bigger than just keeping a press running and keeping money coming in. Yes, that is the primary function of the print business. But I think we all see now it can't be the only function. That work, if it has a bigger purpose for people's lives or the community around the print shops, I think that that is the simplest way to open up to getting people who think differently, and that is diverse, as opposed to just saying, well, this is how we've done it for the last 100 years. And tradition is a wonderful thing, especially in Europe. You guys love your traditions, and I get it. I mean, we kind of, took yours and we modified them over here in America, and then came up with some crazy ones ourselves. But we can have new traditions, and I really think that's the only way it's going to happen. But I would 100% look at it as a business decision, not, oh God, now I've got to tick all these boxes. Understand that if you don't start looking at this, you will not be reflective of the world around you, and that will, in my opinion, move you out of consideration from buyers, which is what we all need, right?
That's a really good point. Attracting top talent can be expensive for some of the smaller organizations. So some of the conversations I've been having with our partners is around cross-training skills and imploring individuals that are within their business to really grow and develop themselves. Is this something that you're seeing, and is this something you're helping through your mentorship programs?
The cross-training is super important, and something that we discuss a lot in Girls Who Print and through our online conferences is career paths. And what does that mean? And career paths are a little confusing in the printing industry. As a matter of fact, when I speak to the students, it's one of the first things that makes them not want to enter the printing industry. They know if they go on the digital side, they can work at a startup and they can become, this technology person, and they more have a path. But they look in the printing industry and they're like, what's a CSR? What happened? Customer service relationship person. Where is my path? They all want to own companies and be presidents of stuff. So like in 6 months, no less. Whereas I don't understand my path. I don't understand any of that. So a lot of what we focus on is that path and what it means. And I think one of the most valuable lessons that have come up as far as skill gathering is that a career ladder is not always a ladder straight up. Sometimes it's a lattice. Sometimes you can go up, then you got to go over to maybe a similar role in another company or another industry. For example, if you're a marketing person, you could probably be a marketing person in many spaces without having to relearn all of your tools. But even if we keep it in the printing industry, you're a marketing person at one vendor, you can probably be a marketing person at another one or at a print shop and so on and so forth. But sometimes you have to learn that you can't always go up in the same place. You have to gather the skills you need for where you ultimately want to end up and then go backwards. That's how I do it. So currently I'm like, what will it take for me to retire? Meaning that I can do whatever I need on a computer from wherever I am. How much money would that take? And then how can I work backwards now to get that? So that's what I would say, that the career path might not always be clear, but just try to understand the next place you want to go. And no matter where you're working, gather those skills. Even if it's not something that's part of your job description, go over to that press and understand how to do something that you might not know how to do, so you could write intelligently about it, so you can create a proposal about it, so you can speak at a conference about it, even though it's not in your job description. Understand finance, understand estimating, understand what everybody around you does, so you can explain it and you understand, if nothing else, what you never want to do, and if you want to be the owner of business, work backwards. What are the skills I need? What are the business classes I need? How do I get a loan, mortgage from a bank? I mean, anything that is. So I would say you have to keep on learning, but don't do it linear. Think about the big picture, work backwards. Think about the next job you want to have or even 2 from now, title, I don't care where it is, and start and gain those skills by any means necessary, especially if you're a woman. No one's going to give it to you. You're going to have to do it yourself.
You need to ask, absolutely. So I think also, just building on your point there we've got industry organisations like the BPIF, the IPIA, who can introduce potential employees, help apprenticeships, networking, etc. And I think it's a great idea, promoting success stories, just like what your network does, Deborah. It's something all companies should be doing more of. So crystal ball time. What is your prediction for the print industry in terms of where it's moving and how it's changing?
I am really optimistic, and I'm not generally an optimistic person. I consider myself more a realist than an optimist. But I have to say that having just come back from Lucerne, Switzerland, where I was at an event called Hunkler Innovation Days, I believe I witnessed a shift in the industry that I did not think was possible. And it was that the attendees there understand now that this is it. This is their moment to kind of get their equipment and their processes and their technology under control, make it as accessible online. And, some people call it digital transformation. We can stick with that. This is it. This is the last moment for it. And there were thousands and thousands and thousands of attendees who were there to learn from all the vendors and make their decisions for their business on moving forward. They weren't asking questions like, what does this do? Like a press, like you might hear at some other events. They were like, what will this do for my business? So these were different questions. There was another group there who had already made these digital transformations over even 10 years. And they realize now the rest of the industry is now going to catch them. So they have to move forward, or they were already ready to move forward with new technology faster. I mean, all the manufacturers stepped up this year with new equipment that was really, embracing and addressing some of the obstacles that printers were having with paper thicknesses and speeds and things like that. Everybody stepped up this year and brought something new. And everybody else, I don't see a future for them. I mean, I guess that's a little pessimistic, but I think there'll still be a lot of mergers and acquisitions. I think that those companies that haven't transformed still have viable businesses. They just, need to be, sort of grabbed up by somebody else who can really nurture them. And then everybody else is going to go away because the technology is not there. If people can't essentially understand what you do, how what you do helps their business, and can make all their purchasing decisions without ever speaking to you, you're not ready for 2023 and beyond. So my prediction is that we're going to move forward, lean, mean, fighting print machine, and we will be unstoppable.
Amazing. That's fabulous. So if we've inspired our listeners, which I hope we did, to think about diversity in their teams, and assuming they don't have large HR dedicated initiatives in their workplace, what practical steps can they take now?
Authentic storytelling, I think, is the most important thing. Really, if anyone's considering this, they're already involved in digital transformation. They already understand that this is more than just ticking off boxes. And if you're not authentic about it, it will come back to bite you. We see this a lot. February was Black History Month in America, and this is March is Women's History Month, as well as being Print History Month. June is Pride Month, and everybody has a logo and something lovely to say, in those 3 months. But what about the rest of the time? What are you doing? And if you're only doing things in those cases to tick boxes, it is not authentic. Yes, It's very much embraced in that time frame, but it is not really a reflection of who you are as a business. And I would just say, really tell those authentic stories. In as many cases as possible, have your customers tell your story for you. And it doesn't have to be, I'm so happy that they have diverse people there. I mean, that's not the story. The story is how somebody succeeded with a new idea, how somebody succeeded with a new process, how somebody succeeded by looking beyond what they usually did in these traditional channels and expanded in some way to maybe a TikTok video because a younger person brought that to the table. So diversity can mean so many things, but now is the time.
Now's the time. That's brilliant, Deborah. Thank you. And this month is Her Story Month. And I thought you might just like to share with us a little bit about what's happening this month and what you're championing in terms of her story.
So as we mentioned, March is Women's History Month. So 5 years ago, I started Women's Print Herstory Month in order to tell the story of what I call the fierce, fabulous females who power the printing industry. It is a way for us to provide ourselves visibility because we are still not on those event stages. We are still not giving those keynotes. I see panel after panel of industry experts and all these people, and there's not a woman to be found. Same thing with trade pubs. I don't see many women on the covers. I don't see many articles about women. So I took it upon myself to say, okay, to coincide with Women's His Story Month, I'm going to create Women's Her Story Month. And I send out a very short Q&A and let people tell everybody who they are. We always have a different theme. Last year, I focused on mentorship because of people coming out of the pandemic, and they were, a little confused about what they should be doing. And this year, I'm 100% focused on visibility because, as we mentioned before, there's less women who came back into the printing industry. Some have changed jobs. Some are still looking for jobs. So I wanted to be able to share their stories, and that's what we're doing. I have over 70 profiles already. The deadline is March 15th, which might be out past this. But I would encourage everyone to go to girlswhoprint.net and just see. And if nothing else, don't tell me there's no women to speak at your event. Don't tell me that there's no women to put on the cover of your magazines. Go to that blog, scroll through, and pick any of those fierce, fabulous females of print and invite them to participate with you.
That's fabulous, Deborah. Thank you so much. And thank you for joining our Anything in Print podcast. And I look forward to reading all about Her Story Month and celebrating Women's International Day with you. So thank you very much and good luck.
Thank you so much. And as we say at Print Media Center, print long and prosper. And as we say at Girls Who Print, empower long and prosper.
Ricoh.